needs to get to. We're in Daf Chaf Beis, Amid Beis. 12 lines down from the top. Amar Rava, middle of the line. Amar Rava. Shvua shalei oichel. Someone made a shvua that I'm not going to eat. Va'achal offer. And he ate dirt. Potter. He's potter. Eating dirt is not eating. It's not edible. What you did is meaningless. Boy Rava. Rava asked the question, Shvua shalei oichel offer. What if he made a shvua, but he was mafarish? He said, I'm not going to eat dirt. Which we said, even when we say shvua shalei oichel, that doesn't exclude, even if that would mean a kazayas, we all agree that if someone says, but I'm only going to eat a shvua that I'm not going to eat a mashu, that mafarish, that is specification will be valid. So over here also, if a person specifies that he's not going to eat offer, he's going to be chayiv, bakama. But the question is, what's going to be the shear of this offer? Kivin the amar shalei oichel daite yakazayis. Then he said, since he said I'm not going to eat it, even though generally speaking, eating offer is not eating, but he said I'm not going to eat offer, so his mind was on a kazayis. Oidoma kivin the lav midi the achli inchihu b'cholshu. Since it's in the end, even though he said shalei oichel, it's not something that's edible. So he means a koshu. He means even any amount. Take. One leaves it as a take. Boy Rava, shvua shalei oichel chartzen. Someone made a shvua that he's not going to eat the little seeds inside of a grape. So, as we all know from Pesach, you can make oil from those seeds. Those seeds are not particularly. The people don't eat them on their own. You don't take grape seeds and eat them. You eat them as part of a grape, but they're not sought after to eat on their own. So, but they are a food because they're part of the grape. Even the misachal al yidei taruvas daite kazayis. Do we say since it's eaten as part of a grape is of course a kazayis, normally eaten as a kazayis. So this is also a kazayis. Oidilma means even according to Rabbi Akiva, who said you could be chayiv when you say shalei oichel on a mashu. That's he does. It's not because he doesn't think a normal achila is a kazayis, but the reason is because since he was mefarish, that would mean a less than a kazayis. But over here, he just said shalei oichel. So do we say daita kazayis? Aydom kiven delay beine achlelei inshi. Since a person doesn't eat it on its own, daita amashu. And this his das would be on a mashu. Zak Gemara teku. The Gemara leaves it as a teku. We don't have a conclusion. Boy Ravashi, Nazir she'amar shvua shalei oichel chartzen. A Nazir that said, now a Nazir is usher in any product that comes from a grape. But this Nazir, on top of that, said also a shavua that he's not going to eat the grape seed. Bekama. So if we assume this is going kafi what we had in the previous question, that we had said a chartzen is going, we had declared whether someone who said, I'm not going to eat a chartzen, whether it's b'mashu or b'kazayis. Let's say that's normally a kazayis because it's normally eaten with the grape. But this Nazir, who made a neder, a shvua, that he's not going to eat the chartzen, on top of his pre-existing isser to eat grape products as a Nazir. But how much does this apply? How does this shvua apply? The kivan the kazayis isur deraisahu, since he's anyway usher to eat a kazayis of chartzen as a nazir. Ki kamishtava hatera kamishtava. In this case, we'll be maskim, even though normally we would say we're assuming in the previous question of a chartzen would normally mean a kazayis when he says I'm not going to eat chartzen, but over here there's no point in saying a shvua on the kazayis of chartzen because anyway usher. So it must mean. By default, it must mean that he's saying a shvua that I'm not going to eat even a mashu of a chartz. The daita mashu. Oidilma, or possibly, even the amar shalei oichel, since he said shalei oichel, even though it's not going to actually accomplish anything, it's just placing another isser on his previous isser, so it just won't be effective. It will be, he's making a shvua on the kazayis of chartz, which was anyway asur, and like we said, once something is also, you can't place a second isser on it, so therefore it won't take effect. Toshma, let's bring a raya to this. Shvua shaloi oichel. This is the Mishnah later on this Amud. Shvua shaloi oichel. A person made a shvua that I'm not going to eat. But achal nevelus a treif shkatz or masam, and he eats dvar masurim, something that's a nevela, treif, or sheketz or a remes. All these are things that you're not allowed to eat anyway. Chayiv. The Tanakhama says you chayiv. Rav Shimon poiter. Shimon says you potter. Why would you be chayiv? Amai chayiv. We had this Gemara really earlier. The question on this Mishnah is, how could a person be chayiv when he makes a shvua not to eat, let's say a nevela, if he's not allowed to eat the nevela, it's already asur to him, and we always have the klal, something that's already asur, if you make a shvua not to eat it, it doesn't take effect, because it's already asur. You can't have one isser piled on top of a second isser. And so we're saying over here he's chayiv for a shvua. How can he be chayiv on a shvua? Since he's obviously this Mishnah is not talking about the isser of eating treif and nevela. He's definitely going to get punished for eating the nevela and treif. What we're talking about is whether he should be chayiv for the shvua, and we're saying he's chayiv for the shvua. So that's the question: how can he be chayiv on that shvua? Rav Shmuel Rabbi Yochanan Damri Bekol Dvam Mutam and Dvam Hasurim. Rabbi Yochanan and Rav and Shmuel say that the answer is that he said, I'm not going to eat anything. So even though the treifus, for example, were already usher to him, he wasn't allowed to eat treifus before this, but he's added on. He said, not only treifus, but anything I can't eat. So when you're saying a larger isser, when you're piling on, when you're making a shavua that applies more broadly than the thing that's usher, then it can be applied. You can be kailul dvarim hamutarim together with something that's already aser, and that's a valid shvu. So that's his answer. Rish Lakish has a different teretz. He says we're going to answer that we're talking over here that the person is applying his isser on the shvua is going to make him be mechuyev on less than a kazayis. So according to and that will depend on the machlekes in our Mishnah. When a person makes shaloi oichel, does it mean for less than a kazayis? So according to the Rabbanon, you only chayiv if you specify. When you're making the shvua, you specify, because we say the Chacham don't hold of, since if it was mafresh, we treat it as if it was mafresh, it would be chayiv. So stam is like it was mafresh, mefarish, and it's like he said he wants to be less than a kazayis. So according to the Rabbanon, he has to say less than the shir. And in order to explain this din in the Mishnah, how you could be mechayiv for the shvua on a nevela, because we're talking about where he said, I'm going to be mechayiv on a nevela, where he said, I'm going to be mechayiv, make a shvua, then I'm going to be mechayiv even on mashu. So then you wouldn't be mechayiv for eating a nevela, so it's not mushba v'yayim. According to Rabbi Kiva, you don't even have to do that. If you say it bastam, we always treat it as if he was mefarish that he wants it to be a mashu. So that will, according to him, that will be the explanation of the Mishnah, that when you say Eine Eichel, you mean generally, since you didn't say any specific thing, we assume it's as if he was mefarish that he wants it to be on a mashu. On a mashu, he's not chayiv in nevela, and therefore the shvua can take effect. For the Gemara says this should be a good analogy to our question. We were questioning about when a person makes a shvua, a nazir makes a shvua to not eat a chartzen, and the nevela, he's something he's not allowed to eat, and we're saying we would assume that it would be it's only because he's mefarish the parish, right? We said in the according to the Rabbanan, the only reason why it's going to be treated as a less than a kazayis, in spite of the fact that it's aser, is only because he was parish, that he meant to say bedavka a less than a kazayis. They're both equivalent. The time of the parish. The only reason by the nazir we said the chacham are going to say chayiv is because he was mefarish. He said specifically he wants to be less than kazayis. So loy parish daita kazayis. You see, other than that, even though it's something that's asur, we don't say that it automatically defaults that he's going to mean it to be the daita is going to be the smaller amount in order that it should take effect. Shma mina. So this is the chayra raya that without being mafarish is daita kazayis, and therefore by a chartzin also when he says he's asked when a nazir is asering a chartzin, he's making a shwan a chartzin, he means a kazayis, unless he's parish. Shmamina. Ela tifsha de boy rava shul soyechel offer bekama tifsha da deika kazayis. Why don't we say the same thing? If we're saying that whenever something is not able to be eaten, we automatically assume that even though it's not able to be eaten, in the case of the nazir, because he's a nazir, he's not allowed to eat grape products. In the case of the nevela, because it's nevela, we say standard is the achila would have to be a kazayis, even though he can't actually eat it. So why don't we say the same thing by our question about dirt? When someone said, I'm not going to eat dirt, why don't we say also he means to say a kazayis of dirt. The nevela ka'afra damya, the time of the parish, daita kazayis. Why don't we say the same Bart? So loy. Offer la barachilu klal. Offer is clearly a different category. Offer is something that's not an edible product at all. So there's no way of understanding when he says achila loy oichel that he means not to eat a kazayas. There's no eating. It's not really eating altogether. The vela bas achila. The vela actually is a bas achila. So it's possible to contemplate when he says loy oichel, he means a kazayas. But are Yehuda Rabbi Yeluya, just that there's a lion that is standing over him about to eat him, meaning that he's being forced not to eat it. He's very happy to eat the delicious hamburger from nevela beef, but it tastes delicious. But he's not allowed to because of a dvar Torah, so that when he says oichel, he can mean a kazayas. Zok the Mishnah. Shvua shalei oichel. Someone made a shvua that I'm not going to eat, but achal v'shasa, and then he went ahead and he ate and he drank. Ein chayav ela achas. Even though he both ate and drank, he's only mechayiv one, and like Rashi says, the Gemara is going to go into it, that even though shtia is included in achila, as the Gemara is going to prove, he's only chayiv one because it's achila and shtia are not two separate sections, two section categories within someone who said, I'm not going to eat. He makes a shua, I'm not going to eat. He means I'm not going to eat or drink. Not like the whatchamacallit, the people who go into a hunger strike and they're eating soup and coffee all day. It's like, this is hardcore. The person says shua shalei oichel, he means I'm not going to eat anything. Shua shalei oichel v'shalei eshte. But what if someone said specifically, I'm not going to eat and I'm not going to drink? Ba'achal v'shasa chayiv shtayim. In that case, he's chayiv shtayim, and that's going to be, the Gemara is going to explain, because clearly it's we've been learning a while, so we understand when he says achal v'shasa, then he himself is dividing it into two separate categories. Shvua shalei oichal v'achal pas chitin upas oirin upas kusman. Person made a shvua that he's not going to eat, and he ate some loaves of wheat and loaves of barley and loaves of spelt. Ein chayiv ela achas. He's only chayiv one. These are all different things they eat. It doesn't make a difference if you make a sandwich, if you eat a hamburger or a taco. You're going to be chayiv only once for violating a shvua that you said you're not going to eat. But what if he made a shvua shalei oichel pas chitin upas oirin upas kusman? If he said specifically, I'm not going to eat pas chitin and pas oirin and pas kusman, va'achal, and then he ate all three of them, chayiv al kol achas va'achas. He's chayiv on each one. And the Gemara is going to ask the obvious question. Maybe when he said I'm making a shvua that I'm not chayiv on these three things, what he's just trying to say is I'm not making a shvua against anything else. Why do we assume it's intended to say that he's chayiv separately? It's making a separate shvua on each one. The pashas would be if a person says I'm shvua that I'm not going to eat anything with any carbs and I'm not going to eat any food dyes. His meaning is not to say that he's making two separate shuas on that. His meaning is, I'm just saying I'm only answering myself on those two things, not everything else, but he's only making one shua. So that's going to be the Gemara's question. Shua shalei eshte. He makes a shua that he's not going to drink. The shasa mashkin harbe, and he drank a bunch of different drinks, ein chayav ela achas, which is very similar to what we said before. If he made a shvuah that he's not going to eat, and then he ate a bunch of different types of loaves of bread, if he made only one, if he only said that I'm not going to eat, then he's chayav only one. Same thing with drinks. Shvuah shalei eshte, shvuah shalei eshte yayin v'shemen udvash. If he made a shvuah that he's not going to drink wine and oil and honey, v'shasa, and then he drank them. The Gemara, obviously, they drank these things, or maybe it means that eating these things is called drinking. I mean, to us, we don't drink either oil or honey, so. But the Gemara doesn't.
Unless it's like honey mead.
He made it into, maybe he made it into some kind of drink, right? Or maybe
we've had the honey mead.
Maybe, and the oil maybe is chicken soup, and he drinks that. Honey mead is going to actually come up in the Gemara, where as something that a kohen is not allowed to drink before he does the avodah because it's meshaka. Yeah. But in any case, if he specified specific things, chayav al kol achas v'achas, he's going to be chayav on each one. So it's really the exact same parallel to the previous section of the Mishnah, which said the same thing about making a shvuah not to eat, and it depends if he made a general shvuah, if he said specified 3 loaves, different types of loaves. The same thing will be if he specified 3 types of drinks. He's mechayev on each one. Shvuah shaloi oichel, made a shvuah that he's not going to eat. V'achal oichlin she'einu ruyin la'achila v'shasa mashkin she'einu ruyin l'shtia. He ate things that are not capable of being eaten, or drank things that are not really drinkable. Potter, it's like he ate afar, or he drank vinegar. These are not foods or drinks, and it's not included when he said he's not going to eat. Shvuah shaloi oichel, made a shvuah. This has come up a couple of times in the previous Gemara, just before today. Shvuah shaloi oichel v'achan avel to treifus grasum urumatzim chayiv. The Tana Kama says you're chayiv. Shimon poiter. Shimon says you're potter. Amar koinim ishti nanisli imachalti hayom. He makes a shvuah, a koinim. He says it's my wife should be also to me. I shouldn't. I'm also to my wife. Or my wife is also to me. Imachalti hayom, if I ate anything today. Bu achal nevelus utreifus skotzer umatzim, and he ate nevelus utreifus skotzer umatzim. Even according to the man Amar, who said before that you're going to be potter. Even if Shimon said you're potter for eating shkotzim nevelus utreifus when you made a shvuah, hari ishte asura. On this, he's going to be asur because this is not something that he can't eat. This is just something that it's the reason why you're potter is because it's mushba v'yomid. Right? He was anyway asur to eat them. But if he makes a kainim on him that says his wife is asur, if I eat, he doesn't. This t'nai can be mekuyim by him eating even in velus utrefus because he has eaten something. Amar Reb Chiya bar Rav and Amar Shmuel. That means it's not mushba v'yomid. This is, we're not adding on a second isser to eating this. What we're saying is this is now a t'nai to make his wife asur to him. So it's not, even though it's mushba v'yomid, it could still function as a t'nai that his wife should become asur b'kainim to him. Zok the Gemara, Amar Reb Chiya bar Rav and Amar Shmuel. Shvuah shaloi oichel v'shasa. Shvuah shaloi oichel v'shasa chayiv. If someone makes a shvuah that I'm not going to eat, and then he drank, he's going to be chayiv, which would follow from what we said in the Mishnah. And the Gemara is going to bring attempt later on to bring a raya from our Mishnah. But in the meantime, the Gemara is going to just attack this on its own. It says someone who makes a shvuah that I'm not going to eat, and then all he did was drink, he's going to be chayiv for violating a shvuah. Iba is saying svara, Iba is saying makra. To learn that, you can see that shtia is included when a person says lo'yachol, shvuah lo'yachol, from either a svara or a pasuk. Iba is saying svara, the amalei inish l'chavre, nita midi, va'ayli va'achli v'shasu. This person will tell his friend, come and eat with me. Nita midi means to go eat with me. And he comes in and he eats and he drinks. So let's just see this taisis, because we actually had referenced this taisis earlier. Tav and ita midi va'azli v'achli shasu, v'shasi Allah b'chlal achilhi, haylan lahatzke gam hashtia. He should have, if the Rata is just explaining what the raya is. Obviously, if when a person says to eat, he doesn't include shtia, he should have said, come and be tayyim and also drink. But he always said was tayyim, and the person comes and drinks. Azli v'shasu nichat. According to the Manda Amrim, who don't say afterwards, v'achli v'shasu. They just say v'ayli v'shasu. It's saying more precisely. It's saying a person will say, come and eat, and he'll come and just drink, which is exactly parallel to our question. If someone says, eichel doesn't include just drinking. What does te'ima have to do with achila? Te'ima is just the Aramaic lashon that they use for achila. So it's exactly equivalent to saying leichel is saying leitayim, and saying come and be tayim is the same thing as saying come and eat. Because he's asking, like, we're trying to understand what the lashon achila, the connotation of lashon achila is, and then we use a different lashon. So he's saying no, te'ima is really the translation or the word that they use in place of achila. So they're exactly parallel. Let's continue in the Gemara, or I could tell you from a pasuk that when the person says eichel, he means shia b'chlal achila. We could bring a pasuk that shtia is included in achila. The Amar Reish Lakish, minayin l'shtia shia b'chlal achila. What do you see that when a person says achila, he also means shtia? Sheneva b'chalta v'nei Hashem l'kacha b'vakam hashivcha l'shachin shemoy sham masa degoyimcha v'siroishcha. A person, when he comes to bring his Meiser Sheni, he comes and brings it to, I think it's Meiser Sheni, to Yerushalayim, and he's going to come there, he'll bring his Meiser, the Goncha of your Dagam, which is of your wheat, V'siroishcha is your wine, your grapes. Then the Gemara says, V'sirish Chamrahu, and Tirish refers to wine, which is a drink. The pasuk called that V'yachalta. No, how do you know that that's right? Maybe it's doing through anigrain, meaning using the wine as an ingredient when you're making a wine reduction gravy for your food. Anigran maya de silky. Anigran is a gravy made out of beets. Achsigroin maya de kulu shilky. That's not, they changed it from silky, which is beets. So it would be just repetitive. Of all types of vegetables, you don't just put the beets in it, but these gravies also have wine as a ingredient in them. So maybe when the Torah says that you're going to come and eat your wine in Yerushalayim, it means that you're using it as an ingredient together with your meat. You're using it as an ingredient in a different dish that you actually eat. Elam, or maybe it's a soup. Elam Ravacha by Yaakov mehacha. So we're going to get it from a different pasuk. We say that a person then, when he has Ma'aser Sheni, he's paid to the Ma'aser Sheni in place, and he gets money, and then he brings the money to Yerushalayim, and he spends it on anything you want. The pasuk says, "Babakar in oxen, tzayid, and sheep, ubayayin, and in wine, ubashecher." And the pasuk continues, you're going to eat this to use lashon achila on this. Zaktamara yayin chamrahu ksiv. Is that yayin is a reference to wine, and it says he's going to eat it. So you see, achila also applies to shia. Maybe it's the same thing like we said before, that he's going to use the wine as an ingredient in a dish of food. Zaktamara, no, because the pasuk says, it doesn't just say yayin, it also says shecher. Midi de meshaka, which is masha, something that's intoxicating. And as we all know, when you cook something with wine, all the alcohol evaporates. That's not meshaka. How do we know that when we talk about the bashecher in the pasuk, it's referring to wine that's being drunk on its own, that's intoxicating? Maybe it's talking about pressed figs. The Tanya achol devela ki'ilis. If you eat pressed figs, the shasho devash, or he drank honey, which is probably the honey med that you were talking about. The chalav, or he drank milk, like we saw by Yael and Sisra, that she gave him milk in order to make him, or we have the same thing in what do we have it on Purim, right? That we drink, not Purim, I'm sorry, on Shavuos we drink milk. Now, when do we drink milk things? Because to someone who was it Hanukkah that we eat? Maybe that's the oil things. I know there's some time we eat things that put you to sleep. That milk puts you to sleep. I don't remember when it is. Okay, but in any case, these are all things that cause a person to change a state of mind. It gets them drowsy. Someone does avoida after eating or drinking these things. The chayiv. So maybe when the pasuk said shecher, it's not a reference to wine, intoxicating wine, but it's a reference to these other things, heavy figs or honey or milk. Eladama shecher shecher min nazir. The Gemara says no, because it says shecher, and we say shecher by nazir. Malal on yayin afkan yayin. When it says a nazir is also in shecher, it's not talking about milk and honey. It's talking about wine. So this also is talking about wine. So that's how we see, since it says achalta, so we're saying achalta goes on wine, which is a liquid, a beverage. Amarava, afanan namitnina. I could also prove it from our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said, someone made a shvua that he's not going to eat, and then he ate and he drank. He's only chayiv once. So if you'll say that shtia is b'chlal achila, so that's why we have to tell you that even though he was chayiv for both the achila and the shtia, he's only chayiv one. Eliyam shtia la b'chlal achila. It's very interesting. The Gemara gives this example. The Gemara says, what would happen if someone says, I'm not going to eat, and then he ate and he also did a malacha? He never said anything about doing a malacha. So obviously, you have to tell me that you're not going to be chayiv too for eating and doing malacha. You never said it. You never asked malacha. So if shtia is not b'chlal achila, so what would the Mishnah need to tell me that you're not chayiv for the shtia? Amalei Abaya, Elamai shtia b'chlal achila. Right? So do you have the same problem the other way? If you say shtia is included in achila, ema seifa. What about the seifa shvua shalei oichol v'shalei eshta? He made a shvua he's not going to eat and he's not going to drink. Ba'achol v'shasa chayiv shtayim. He's chayiv too. Kivin alma shalei oichol. It's a lebe shtia. Ki alma shalei eshta amai chayiv. Why would you be mechayiv too when he says shalei oichol v'le eshta? If achila already includes shtia, it's already asur, so it's like a mushma v'yomed. Once something is already asur, you can't add on a second isser on it. So how can you chayiv one for the achila and one for the shtia? He was already chayiv on both with the first thing. It's like the ilu amar shaloi eshte trezimni. Ilu amar eshte trezimni mechayiv tarti. Had he said, I'm going to be mechayiv, he said two times, I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to assure that I'm not going to drink, the second shvur would not take effect. So if when he said shalei oichal, it includes shalei eshta, it already took effect beforehand. So how would the second one cause him to mechayev twice? Amalei hasan amal shalei eshta v'hada amal shalei oichal. We're talking about, and this is very strange in the Mishnah, because the Mishnah said it the other way around, but he says that we have to understand that the Mishnah means, or you have to change the lashon in the Mishnah, where he first said shalei eshta. So the shalei eshta only applies on the shtia. Then afterwards he made a shvua that he's not going to eat. The shtia b'chlal achila, isa achila b'chal shtia lesa. Achila is not including him when he said that I'm not going to drink. Avalama shvua shalei oicha v'shalei eshta v'acha v'shasa ma ein chayev al achas. So the Gemara says, so what are you saying? You're saying that the explanation over here, the reason why it's true that shtia is included in achila. The reason why he's going to be chayiv two over here is because he first said the shvu on shtia, and then he said the shvu on achila. But smashma, if it was the other way around, you're conceding that if it was the other way around, that he still said achila first, he wouldn't be mechayiv. He'd only mechayiv one. Ihach he had the tani reisha shvu shalei oichal ba'achal v'shasa in echayiv al achas. Why did the Mishnah to give you as an example if someone was only chayiv one, where he said shvu shalei oichal, and then he was ate and drank? Listen, you could even talk about where he separated the two things. But as long as he said the shvua on achila first, the shvua on shtia won't take effect. So the Mishnah could have said a bigger chiddush. It could have said you only chayiv one, even if you made a separate shvua on the shtia. As long as you made the shvua on the achila first, the one on the shtia can't take effect. And we'd be able to make we'd certainly understand that if he said just shaloy that he's only going to be chayiv one. El olam kediktani. Elamai, you have to go back, like we said. Pashani hacha, that means we're not changing around the order of what the Mishnah was saying. Pashani hacha, keeping shamash le'oicha v'hadam shle'yeshta, gali adaita dehacha achila da'ama achila geidasihi. Since he said them separately, achila normally would mean einachanami would mean shtia as well. But if he says shle'oicha v'shle'yeshta, he's making it clear that when he said achila, he meant specifically eating as opposed to shtia. Just in the context, since he says shtia afterwards, that means that the achila did not mean shtia. Amravashi, Masisa Nami Deka. You could also be medayik from our Mishnah, from a different part of the Mishnah. Shua shalei oichel va'oichel oichlin she'en ruyin la'achila v'shasa mashkin she'en ruyin l'shtia. If he made a shua that he's not going to eat, and he ate things that are not roy la'achila and mashkin that are not roy la'shtia, pater. Haruyin chayiv. But if he was roy, they were chayiv. Amaya shua shalei oichel ka'amar. He just said shua shalei oichel. So even if it was a shtia that was royal shtia, even if he shows something that's royal shtia, if you would say that oichel did not include shtia, he should be potter in any case, because he never said anything about it. He never made a shvur on it. So in other words, says no. It could be it's talking about just the same way we answered before. It could be that the reference over here was he made a shvur separately on the achila and the shtia. So you can't be medayik from that part of the Mishnah. You have to come on to the earlier raya that we had said. Saktamar. Shvua shalei oichel v'achal pas chitin. The Mishnah continued. He said a person who made a shvua, he said he's not going to eat, and he ate pas chitin and pas oirin and pas subin. He ate a loaf of wheat bread and a loaf of barley bread and a loaf of spelt bread. He's going to chayiv only one. But if he said shvua shalei oichel pas chitin, shvua shalei oichel pas oirin, then he's going to be chayiv separately on each one. In fact, the Gemara, like we expressed when we learned the Mishnah, how do we know when he's specifying these three things? His point is to say that each three of these, I'm making three separate shvuos, one for pas chitin, and one for pas oirin, and one for pas subin. Is it pas subin? Kusmin, right? Maybe what his point is just to say I'm only making a shvua on all three of these things, but I'm only making one shvua on all three of these things, and I'm saying these three things are asur and everything else not. That's what you'd normally assume. If a person makes a list of things that are asur, he only means the things that he listed. So if he meant to say that he's only asking himself on these, he wouldn't say pas chitin, pas oirin, and pas kusmin. He'd just say chitin, oirin, and kusmin. Maybe if you would say that, if we just say chitin sa'ir nukusmin, it would be also to him even to eat them in their unbaked form, where you just choose on them, and that's not normally a way of achila. So all he means to say Well, the point is he wants to say I'm only answering them to eat, not baked. I mean to say specifically these things that they're also to me, even in their unbaked form, which is not the normal way to eat them. And he's saying that's the way I want to be also. So no, if he wanted to take away that possibility, the reason why he said these things is to avoid that you shouldn't. He said pas chit and pas and pas kusmin is to avoid the possibility you'll think he means to say just chewing them without baking them. Then he could have just said one pas. He didn't have to repeat pas on each one. He could have said pas chitin sa'ir nukusmin. If you would have said that, I would have thought the pas only refers to the first one, and the other two things he could even chew them. He should have said, instead of pas chitin visar, he should have said vishal sa'ir and vishal kusmin, and that would be clearly referring back. Everything is referring back to the pas they all have to be pas, and he's saying that they're all also. So from the fact that he didn't say that, he means to say that it's mechuyev separate on each one. Fact the Gemara of Adilma Yedei Taruvas. Maybe what he wants to say by saying pas chit and pas oir and pas kusmin is not to say that they're separate shvuos, but rather just to say that don't think that I mean to say that you have to mix I have to eat all of them together. I have to eat all of them in order to be mechayiv for my shvuah. So the Gemara ema v'chein shel sa'ir v'chein shel kusmin pas lamli. The Gemara says, but you still could have precluded that by pas shel chitin v'chein shel sa'ir v'chein shel kusmin. Then you can't say it means that you have to eat them together because he's saying v'chein that it's similar. So that would have been able to tell you everything you want. From the fact to say pas shma mina lechalik v'aistais, he intends it to be a separate shvuah for each one as opposed to excluding other things. The Mishnah continued, we're going to have really the same question on the next shtickle of the Mishnah, where the Mishnah had not only said this about pas chit and pas ha'orim, but we also say about yain v'shemen udvash, that if he says them, he means to say a separate shvuah on each one is in chayiv 3. If he says shalosh eshte, it means on all 3 of them. It means anything. But if he says if he lists them separately, then he chayiv on each one. And over there, we're not going to have the answer of pas because it does not talk about pas. So bishlam hasam da amit miyasrele pas l'chiyuva, pas l'chiyuva. We had an answer of explaining by the pas how we know that the pas means to be mechalik and say you separate. He's saying a separate shvuah on each one because why did it have to say pas for each one? Alahacha mai havalei l'meimah. What should he have said over here that you're saying that it's not coming to exclude everything else other than yayin and vash and shemen? It's l'chayra when he says a shvuah shaloi eshte yayin shemen udvash. L'chayra would mean to say is I'm only making a shvuah that I shouldn't eat these things and not anything else. Why are we not assuming that and instead assuming that what he's trying to say is I'm mechuyev on each one a separate shvuah? So on pas we had answered because the Mishnah says pas on each one, so that's little chalik. But over here it doesn't say pas. There's no word being mechalik them. Maybe he's coming to, like we just said, to aser him to allow him to drink other things. Just these 3 things are aser. We're talking about where these things are in front of him. He has the yayin and the dvash and the shemen in front of him. He should have just said, I'm not going to drink these things. From the fact that he listed them, he wants to say a separate shvuah on each one. Maybe if he would have said, he's coming to say, just, I'm not drinking these things and I am drinking others. So if he would have said that, and he didn't mean to say that, what he meant to say is that these things are going to be separate. So how could you deduce anything from the fact that he didn't say Elu, meaning maybe what he's saying is just this bottle of wine and this bottle of shemen, this bottle of dvash that's in front of me, that I'm not going to drink, but I'll drink a different one. Those are not also to me. So therefore he couldn't just say this lashon of Elu. So how do you know, again, he didn't have another option of how to express it. So how do you know he means to be mechalik? Maybe it's coming to exclude everything else. He should have said, sure, that I'm not going to drink like these things. That might have been misinterpreted to say that I'm saying that he's limiting it only if this is a 16-ounce can of wine in front of him. He's saying, I'm only not drinking other 16-ounce cans, but anything that's more than that or less than that, if it's 2-liter bottle or if it's a 8-ounce bottle, that would be mutter. So that would also be unclear. Going to Amar Shvuah min elu, where he says a shvuah that I'm not going to drink anything similar, anything from this variety, which would mean any size. The delma min elu shasina inu gufayu shasina. If he says I'm not going to drink from this min, I might say he's trying to say I'm only allowed to drink this thing in front of me. Other things that are from the same type, I'm not allowed to drink, but this thing I could. So Zakhamara, let him very, very, very clear, make it clear. He said, I'm not allowed to drink this, and it's min. I don't know why this is like a more attractive way to express himself. So we don't have so we're left with the question that l'chayr we still don't have. Where is the mashmoyis of where he says that I'm not going to drink these things? These yain, shemen, and dvash, he means to be mechalik. We're talking about where his friend is urging him to drink. His friend is saying, come and drink with me wine and oil and dvash. All he should have said is a shvua that I'm not going to drink with you. Because this guy is saying, come drink with me. He's saying, I'm not going to drink with you. Shvua, and that will be clear that that's what he's talking about. Yain Ushem and Dvash Lamali. So why is he listing all these things? That's it's clear what we would have been clear what he's talking about. And now he said, he said Yain Shem and Dvash, it means to say on each one. Tanan Hasan, Tain li chitinus iron v'kusman sheyesh li biyadecha. Some we said in the Mishnah, give me this is later on in the Masechta. Give me the chitin. Reuven says to Shimon, you owe me some chitin and sa'irim and kusman. And Shimon answers back, shvua she'en lecha biyadi klum. So he makes a shvua that I don't have any of your belongs to me. Ein chayav el achas. He only is chayav for one shvua sa'edis. This is a shvua sa'edis. This is an aid who says that doesn't belong to me. So the question is, when he says she'en lecha biyadi klum, is he making a separate shvua? The answer is no. He's making a one shvua that doesn't have anything. But if you list each thing, he's making a separate shvua on each thing. Rabbi Yochanan says, even not only do we say that it's considered a separate shvua on each one, Rabbi Yochanan says, in addition, he can also be mechoyev if each one of these things was less than a pruta. Shavuos ha'edus, you only chayev. The share of a Shavuos ha'edus is a Shavuos about how much money you owe. So the share for that is a pruta. If all of them together equal a pruta, he's mechoyev for that also a single Shavuos ha'edus. When he says Shavuos she'en lecha biyadi chitin sa'irim v'kusman, if he said Shavuos lecha biyadi klum, and then he also said Shavuos she'en lecha biyadi shem biyadi klum and Shavuos she'en lecha biyadi chitin sa'irim v'kusman, the question is, are you in addition to being chayiv on all of them, is there also a fourth iser? Because he said she'en lecha biyadi. He said, when we say in the Mishnah that he's chayiv for each one, meaning for the three shvuos that he made, but he's not going to be chayiv for the fact that he said that I don't owe you anything. Right? Because he said at the beginning, shvuos she'en lecha biyadi klum. So the question is that subsumed within what he later says, I don't have any of these specific things, and he also said, I don't have anything of yours. So Chad Amar, Aprati Mechayev Aklal Mechayev. He's only Mechayev for the three, but not on the fourth, She'en Chabiyadi Klum. But Chad Amar Aklal not Mechayev. So Gemara, Hachamai, what's the din Legabi? So going back to our din, what we were talking about, we're talking about someone who makes a shvua that he's not going to eat the three types of loaves: a loaf of chita and a loaf of barley and a loaf of kusman. Would they also argue on that? Is that whether there's going to be a separate iser to ask him on eating? If he eats these three things, in addition to eating these three things, he's also going to be aser for saying shvua shelo yochel. Hachamai amarava hakyashra hasam mechayev aklal mechayev aprata ha'yishtama v'hadam ishtam mechayev tarti. How can you can't compare a shvuas ha'edus shvuas eichlin? A shvuas eichlin, when a person makes a shvua that I'm not going to eat, and then he makes another shvua that I'm not going to eat, the second shvua doesn't take effect. Once it's aser to him, he can't add on to it. I'm sorry, it's the other way. But on the I left out the ice sphere. But the Gabi Shavuos Edis, where he's saying a shvua that I don't owe you any money, he can make a number of shvuas, and each shvua is a new shvua Edis. He's saying that I didn't do it, and that's he's chayav a separate shvua on each one. It's not considered mushma v'yayimid because he's talking about whether he owes it or not. It's not so he's making a shvua about the truth of something. It's not answering something, so there's no mushma v'yayimid already. So Zaknamara Hachi Sagadai Tachisa Bekola Prati Mechayev mushma v'yayimidu. But over here, it doesn't make any sense. Once he's mechayev on the cloud, then he wouldn't be mechayev on the other three. So there's no way to say, even according to Mount Ahmed, it says there's 4 isurim over here. There'd only be the 3 isurim for the bread. Stop over here, and B'ez Hashem, see you tomorrow.